Good morning, everybody. It's Tom Christie back in the carving shop, and this will be session 3 of carving a Drake Spectacled Eider. In the previous sessions, we got the head shaped up. I'm going to change things up a little bit because I'm waiting for eyes for this bird. And so I'm not going to install the eyes today. We'll move on to the body and get that shaped up. And we're going to start with some layout work. Because there are some unique features of the body of the Spectacled Eider Drake. I want to make sure we do that layout work before we start carving on the bird. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, doesn't cost anything, and that helps me out and helps me continue to build this channel. And if you want, you can select to be notified of any new content that I add to the channel. That's a little icon that's a bell shape on the right side of the screen. If you hit that, there's a drop-down menu that comes up and you can select to have notification if you want. Not a requirement at all. So let's get started on the Spectacled Eider Drake body. Okay, I'm going to carve this bird with a little separation between the scapular sections on the back so that the back is exposed here right up to the cape. And in order to lay that out on the decoy, I've cut out a little section on the pattern to make that easy to do. And I'm going to scoot this over. Pardon me for the repositioning, but scoot this over to where I can butt this up against a vertical surface and get my pattern lined up with that and get on the center line. And that will help me know exactly where this area needs to be. So I'm going to sketch that in on the back here. And this is kind of important because we have these thorn feathers on either side, and we need to leave this raised material in the proper location. Now I'm going to go to the back here and just kind of eyeball, get windage on these sections. I just have to be careful I don't slap things down because that brings us up short in the tail. So we want to keep the pattern kind of in its horizontal position as we're doing this layout work. So that gives us a guideline here. And I know I can take this area down in the center, and this will become the inside areas of the wingtips that we're going to have out here. So we'll do that layout work. The cape will come right back to here. And now I want to do some general rounding of the bird, but having that in position, I know not to take too much material, particularly off this area where these raised feathers are going to be on the back. Now we'll get some tail layout work done. Get the side profile. And figure out where how far this tail comes up on the side. We'll go ahead and put a guideline here on either side where that tail comes into the body, and then we can sketch that in. And notice I'm taking this down below so that we have a little bit of a cupped shape to the tail from the center line. If I bring it up too quickly, we're going to end up with a really flat tail profile across the back there, which I don't want. So do that on both sides. Again, I'm starting a little lower, but getting up to the center line in back here. up to my marks. Leave enough thickness in the tail that we can keep it strong. And then I want to go ahead and lay out the primaries. You can see there's not a huge cross here. The wingtips on this particular pattern pretty close to each other. So I'm going to want to go back to this area around the center line. And then those tie into these. Let's see, this bird's going to be turned to the left slightly. So I'll drop the primary in front on this side. And then kind of sketch in where those go over here. Again, I'm just kind of eyeballing this from experience, but you can take your time, use your pattern, make sure you get your layout work done a little cleaner than I'm doing here. All right, now we can start rounding the bird. The other thing, I've got a little left head turn on this bird is what I want. So I'm going to have to remove some material here since I don't have a real flat surface. So I just sketched in where the neck and head lie in general, so that as we're rounding, I'm not taking a lot of material out of those areas. I'm going to start with this 3/4 inch diameter ball-nosed or round-nosed cylinder, and this is kind of my go-to rough carving bit. This is a saber tooth bit, and it's a fine tooth. The yellow color is always fine in the saber tooth brand. And I just like a fine bit. I've used the green ones, which hog off wood a little quicker, but they can also kind of snag and chatter and really gouge. So I'm just more comfortable with the fine bit, even though it takes a little longer. This is normal speed, and I will speed up the video so we can get through this a little quicker, but I just wanted to start at normal speed. I was pointing to those raised areas. I don't want to take too much wood off until we get those penciled in and I know exactly where they're going to be. So right now I'm just doing general rounding of the bird. So I'll speed this up and then we can still talk through each area as we're doing this rough carving on the bird. I'm just rounding the breast area and that little groove that follows the cape down each side of the breast. General rounding. And I won't spend too much time on this, but I want to show enough video, especially for those of you that have not seen my previous videos. This may be the first one you're looking at, and so I want to give enough video here that you can get a good feel for how I'm rough carving this bird. Right now I'm just digging into the tail area, and I want to leave some coverts back there, so we can't take the tail feathers too far back into the body. And now I'm just using that bit to take some wood off in that area, and keeping in mind that we have to carve primaries into this bird, so I'm just removing material in general back there just to get it out of the way. But if you notice, I'm still leaving the wing tips, the primaries intact on top. And we'll use some other carving bits to carve the details into the wing tips. I'll do the opposite side in similar fashion, and now we can change bits and work on some of the other areas here. So I'm going to a 3/4 inch straight cylinder saber tooth burr, again, and I'm going to use that to carve the underside of the tail. So going in very slowly and relieving material on the underside. And that sharp edge cylinder really does a nice job of creating a shelf down there that we want. So pretty soon I'll flip this over so that we can take a look at the underside, but I'm going to do the opposite side. This is against the grain, so you have to go slow. If you're not familiar with grinding, you know, there are grinding machines that you can reverse the rotation on them. I don't choose to do that. I just take a little bit more time and not try to take too much wood off when you're going against the grain. Now I'm using that bit to undercut the tail and define the lower part of the tail feathers there. Beginning to form the rump that goes under the tail, and I'll start to round that area here in a second. I'm going to go ahead and speed this video up now. So this is 2 times speed, just so you're aware of that. And again, I'm just going back and forth, creating a nice underside and then rounding that rump area with this bit. All right, now I want to use that same bit to create separation between the primary groups here. So I'm cutting a shelf down on that side of the bird, and then using that bit to create the V between the wingtips, and then going ahead and defining, taking that other primary group a step lower. So I'm doing a lot of work with this rough bit, and then we'll come back with more precision work later. Now that I have those kind of formed in place, I can take material out. And those crossed wingtips are at an angle. So we need to put a little bit of an angle down into the side pocket to make that accurate. Now I'm switching to this 1/4 inch cylinder. I'm back to normal speed on the video, just so you're aware. So we can watch this a little closer than that fast speed. And I'm just using that bit to carefully go down in that area that we need to lower between the scapular groups on either side. So I'm just cutting a trench in there, and then we'll remove material so that we take that back area down low. We're keeping material there, but those thorn feathers angle, they're closer to the back in the center, and then they start to raise as they go outboard. So I don't know if that makes sense, but we'll see that in more detail here in a minute. So I'm just working that area down and carefully removing material, and I'll speed this up so we can get through it quicker. Now I'm going to work on the opposite side, and you can see I'm angling that. As you go away from the center line of the bird, that feather gets higher away from the center line, those thorn feathers. So we can put a little bit of a bevel on there, and then we'll shape them up. Now I'm cutting in that area and joining it into the primary groups. And we want to leave this a little bit crowned in the middle, this middle section. So there's a little bit of roundness there. We're just trying to portray the the body itself as it flows under those scapular and primary feathers on either side, and that body goes down and ties into the tail coverts and tail. So taking that down now, and I'm just going to continue to work on that until I'm satisfied with the elevation of that area, but you can see the shadow there now. All right, we've got some rough shaping on the body. Just give you a quick view of that. Fairly rounded from the back. We've got the tail roughed out. Primaries cross. We've got this depressed area up between the scapular sections where the back shows through. Now I want to do some layout work to locate the cape and also lock in how big are these thorn feathers and what shape are they, so that we can kind of grind those down. And then we have this very distinctive section. The tertials are kind of curved down in a pretty tight grouping, at least on my version, and that seems to be pretty accurate. And from above you can see how they kind of follow a line, so a curved line down with lengthening tertials there. Then there's a little section here that we're going to want to carve in some detail. We'll do that later, but I want to get these positioned and then lay out the side pockets, the cape, begin to get a better feel for how things lay in on the body. All right, I'm getting a width on these thorn feathers rough. So from the edge to the outer section, get that on both sides so that we can pencil in that. And then you can see these come to a point closer to the center of the body and then come back. So I'm going to want to put a point up in that vicinity and then carve these back, and they're actually raised out here. They kind of tuck along the back here. So we're going to want to remove the material in this area and leave these raised out here. They kind of curl back like that. So we'll carve those in. And then the rear of the side pocket is here. So I want to begin to develop these dimensions on the side pocket. And I'm going to use the calipers to do that. And see how far from the bottom of the decoy this comes up in the rear section here. Put a mark both sides. Then they dip down as they get closer to the front here. Let's put a mark up here. Trying to keep this in the camera, so it's a little awkward, but we'll get through it. Then it comes back up near the front, pretty typical of side pocket shape from the side. So as it approaches the breast, there's a little bit of a rise here, back up. Now we can pencil in that guideline. There's one of my marks, dips down. Make sure I'm in camera. Comes back up here. Okay. Now I want to get a point up here, and I want to, and its relation to the cape here. So let's get a measurement from the front of the decoy or bird to the back side of the cape. I'll scoot over here. That should correspond, I hope, with that position, and it does. So right there is the rear of the cape where we have that identified. Now, similar to other birds, I want to get a measurement from the back of the cape to this front corner with the dividers. Come over to the bird, go from the rear of the cape, draw an arc here, both sides. And then let's get a measurement from the center line to that point. And that needs to line up with this arc, wherever that falls. Right there. Same thing on this side. Right about there. So now we have enough to sketch in the cape. And now let's do our top-down layout. So kind of the middle of the cape is normally the widest point on the shoulders. I'm calling them the shoulders. So we come up to the carving and mark it out that way. And then get a measurement back here. I need to put my piece back in to make sure I have a good center line here. And I want to go from the center line to the upper edge of the side pocket at its narrowest point back here. Gonna ballpark that center line here. So that comes up about there, both sides. Now we can sketch in the top-down view. And then that ties into the rear of the side pocket back here. And this is the material we'll take out. All right. And I'm going to get those rounded, and we need to be careful that I don't gouge out too much material in this area on both sides, because we want to leave material for these nice tertials that are coming down, and they need to be kind of crowned shaped. So we'll leave material back here, not dig too deep in the rear of the side pockets here. So I've got enough now that we can do a little bit more carving. Okay, this is normal speed, and I'm using that cylindrical 3/4 inch saber-tooth burr. And that hard edge, again, we can kind of dig in and remove the material we need to. So I'm following the top-down profile there and taking the side pocket down to the side profile. if you watch me carve other birds, all of these processes are pretty similar. It's just the shapes sometimes that are different between birds. So I'm taking my time and not trying to remove too much wood at once, and just slowly taking that down to where I hit the side pocket profile from the side. I'm going to speed this video up again so that we can make things move quicker. So now we're at 2 times speed. So you can see now I've hit the top profile, and I'm just cleaning it up now, making sure things are relatively smooth. We've hit the side profile and the top profile, and now I can start rounding the back. And while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and use this same bit to quickly rough shape those thorn feathers and then remove the material around the edges of it. Now I'll go back to rounding. Now I'm going to dig in where the cape comes down and meets the side pocket, and then also create a little bit of a definition there around the back of the cape. Carve that other thorn feather quickly, or group of thorn feathers. I think there's a couple of feathers in that group. Now I'm going to round the side pocket in the opposite direction. And when we're done, we want that side pocket to be nice and round. No square block looking edges on a live bird. So nice curves. Now I'm digging in the lower edge of the rear of the side pocket there to create a little definition where it wraps under the belly. You do need to go back and forth to clean things up, especially with these heavy grinding bits. It's easy to put a mark where you don't want it, so I'm just cleaning things up as I go. Now I'm rounding the cape a little bit. Tying the scapulars and the thorn feathers down into that center part of the back where we've exposed some of the back. It's always a good idea to pause after some rough carving like that and do some dimensional checks. So I'm just checking across the wings here and see if I'm coming in. That looks really good. See if my carving is matching up with where I want it to be according to the pattern. Get a dimension across the back of the side pockets here. And that looks pretty good as far as the thickness there. Do some quick checks on the depth of the side pockets from the side. At the tallest point, that's very close. I'm always checking for symmetry from side to side too. That looks pretty good. This doesn't have to be precision, but it helps to just do a gut check and make sure I'm going low enough. That looks right on. That looks good. Then one more check here as they raise back up near the front. Looks like I could go a little bit lower there. Same on this side, so I'll probably take that down just a hair on both sides. But in general, it looks pretty good. So I'll make those tweaks, and you can see I've kind of shaped these feathers up at least roughly. Now we need to do some layout work after I do these tweaks on the tertials here. Begin to shape them up and see where they're located. And I want to carve kind of a group of tertials in there. All right, let's take a look at the tertials. I'm getting a measurement here to see how low these drop. You can see they're lined up pretty much with the back of the side pocket. I may take them a little further back, just looking at reference photos, but they droop down about this far in my pattern, so I want to keep that reference dimension in mind. Right there. And from the top, we've already got this line established, so I can just kind of follow that line down to that point we put there, just behind the side pockets. So they really drop down. Right now I'm just kind of giving myself a guideline on the group itself, not worrying about individual tertials. They're going to come from this point, droop down back here, go to this point, kind of go back up. So that helps us define the group. And then this primary feather group will continue both sides, and we'll need to line up with that mark or this tip for this side. So just roughing that in. Now I'm going to carve this group in place just so we get some dimension around that before we worry about locating the primaries. So let's do the tertial group first. Okay, I'm going to start with this 1/4 inch cylindrical burr. This is kind of my workhorse detailed burr. So I'm going to follow that line and basically create a trench so that I can begin to lower the primaries and the rump behind that line. So now I'm going to take material out and leave the tertial group raised slightly. Do the same thing on the opposite side, and I'll speed the video up here. So we're at 2 times speed. Same process, create that trench, round the tertial group. And to make things go a little faster, I'm using this larger cylindrical burr to take material off behind the tertial group and lower that a little bit on both sides. And I will have to go back to the smaller bit to get some of those tighter areas, but this just speed things up a little. Now I can use the smaller bit to get in that primary feather area. I'm just taking that down to another lower level. So I'm trying to end up with kind of a rounded group of tertials drooping down the sides there on top of the side pocket. So now I'm rounding that tertial group. And we don't need a lot here. You know, it's kind of a subtle, but it'll be raised a bit, and then I can come back and add some more tertial details later, probably in the next session. Now I want to pencil in where I want the primaries to come down into under those tertials. And I'm using that burr to define that the edge of the primary group on both sides, and then taking the rump down a little bit and blending that into the tail coverts area. So we'll have a little bit of a shadow there where those primaries are raised above the rump area. And then I'll have to work to make sure that the primary group's alignment is correct, particularly for that one that's tucked underneath. Now I'm going to use this 1/2-inch sanding drum with probably 150 grit paper on it and just use it to smooth everything out. And I really like this 1/2-inch drum because you can get into kind of tight areas. You can use the edge of it to do a little bit of shaping while you're doing your sanding. And it gets into tight areas like this to just remove the tool marks. And we've done a lot of rough grinding, and now we need to smooth things out before we get into any kind of detailed carving later. So I won't have much sanding video here. Just know that I'm going to go over the entire bird this way and smooth things up. And not only smooth, but shape things. If I see something a little out of whack, I can use the sanding drum to finish things up. All right, I think we'll call that a wrap on this session of carving a Drake Spectacled Eider. We've got the body roughed out and generally the feather groups identified and shaped up. In the next video, we'll work on detailing some of the body, putting a little more detail, probably getting the head set in position. And if I get those eyes, I'll get the eyes installed as well. So things are shaping up. He's looking pretty good. Until next time, good carving to all of you. This is Tom Christie signing out.